Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. A few days ago, someone called me to ask me some questions about the tariqat. And the way he understood the tariqat was by way of the parts of yourself that are inappropriate that you begin to do away with, that you begin to work on and go deeper than the mandatory laws within the Sharia. It was an interesting point of view. Of course, it's not the only point of view, and it's not the only way to approach the tariqat. The tariqat is the beginning of the understanding that the path, the straight path, leads towards Allah, and you begin to establish the fundamental necessities of what you have to do in order to move in that direction. Arrogance is one of the big problems in being able to move forward. Now, when you look at the Ten Commandments or you look at the Sharia, there's no specificity that says you should do away with arrogance. But as you go on, you begin to realize that arrogance is a hindrance in your progress. With arrogance, you can't move forward. And why can't you move forward? Because arrogance believes that it knows everything. And when you are in the situation where you believe that you know everything, you cannot learn anything new. A professor came to visit a Zen master, and the Zen master was performing a tea ceremony. And the professor sat down, and the Zen master began to pour him some tea. And the master filled a cup and continued to pour and pour and pour. And the water was flowing all over the table and down the professor's pants. And the professor said, "You've already filled the cup. What are you doing?" Well, he said, "It's like you. Your cup is already full. I'm not quite sure why you came here, because you can't learn anything if you come with a full cup." One of the first things that we, each of us, individually, has to develop is humility. We have to understand how little we know, how little we understand, and we have to be open to learning. Open to learning means that we don't take hard and fast positions, especially as to others. We take positions as to ourselves, but we don't push ourselves onto others. There's the example of the man who sees somebody else commit a fault, and it burns like a fire through him, and he begins to exclaim and explain the other person's fault, but yet he never sees his own faults, and the faults that he has have no impact on him. Jesus said that you can see a speck in another man's eye, but you can't see the log in your own eye. So Sufism is an attempt to turn the focus of our viewpoint from the world to ourselves, from an external point of view to an internal point of view, to being able to look at ourselves and be able to come to the point where we can judge ourselves. Now, to do that, we have to be very honest with ourselves, And we have to be able to look closely at the way we do things, how we do things, and our intention. Intention is at the source of all that we do. It begins with the way we act. If we have an intention, we should bring that intention into action. We should bring that intention into being. Sufism is about how we are, who we are, and what we become. You'll notice that I'm constantly referring to we, ourselves. Sufism is about us. Allah has sent messengers in order to have us come to the fruition of the intention that was established when we were created. Allah created man so that he could have a creation that he could come to know and that could come to know him. The Nur came from Allah and they communed with each other. And when man was created by Allah, the Nur, the light, was put within each man. So each man has this capability of understanding the light, of understanding beyond this form. Arrogance is limited to form. It is interested in form and is not as interested in that which is formless. There was a sheikh who was constantly giving money to all of the poor people within the community and establishing kitchens so they could eat and establishing hostels so they had places to live. And he was going through money very, very quickly. He had always promised the ones who he borrowed this money from to be able to do what he was doing, that he would pay them back. And because of his status, he really had no problem borrowing money. So he just kept on borrowing more and more and more money from the people with wealth within his community. Well, there came a time when he was on his deathbed, and all of the men that had loaned him money were now beginning to be worried about the return of their funds. It wasn't as if they needed the money, but that was not their nature. They were not charitable, even though they were willing to give loans. They wanted return for what they were promised. So all of the men that he had loaned money to came to his deathbed, and they formed a circle sitting around him. And he looked up and he said to one of his dervishes, "They are all scowling. We should do something to improve their temperament. Why don't you go outside and buy halva from the boy who sells halva every day outside our place? And maybe that will put them in a better mood." So the dervish went outside, and there was the young boy selling halva. And he was screaming, "Halva, halva." And the dervish went up to him and he said, "I want all that you have. How much is that?" And he said it was half a dharma. And the dervish said, "That's fine. I will pay you. Give me the halva and bring it into the sheikh." And they brought it in and they distributed the halva to everybody. And within a few seconds, the plate was empty. And the young boy began to demand his money, his half a dharma. Now, all of the people that were sitting around the bed were owed hundreds of dharmas. They were owed lots of money. But the money didn't have the same effect on them as it had on this boy. This boy began to scream, "You don't understand my situation. I work for a man who supplies this. I have to reconcile with him at the end of every day and give him halva back and the money. If I don't give him the money, my life is in danger. You have to pay me." And the dervish said, "We will pay you soon. Right now, we don't have the money." And the boy began to cry and wouldn't leave. This went on until the noon prayer. About 6 hours had passed. After the prayer, a man came in carrying a large tray. When they opened the tray, when they took the top off the tray, there was a little bag of money, which was enough for each of the specific people who had loaned money. And to the side, wrapped in a piece of paper, was a half a dharma for the boy who had supplied the halva. And the sheikh said, it took the tears of the halva seller in order for Allah to respond to the need that was going on. Sometimes it takes tears in order to bring Allah's generosity into being. The men who wanted their money just sat and, in fact, arrogantly demanded their money, even without saying a word. That's why they were there. Everybody knew that's why they were there, and they just expected to be paid. The boy understood things at a different level. The boy was desperate for this money because without this money, his life was in danger, and he began to emote from his heart. Allah heard his pain, and because of his pain for that half a dharma, everybody in the whole circle got paid. Now, there's a few interesting observations to make here. One of them is that if someone in your company is truly connected to truth and is able to bring about Allah's compassion on the community, it's an assistance to the entire community. It's an aid to the entire community. And that's why we have to be very respectful of the ones who are close to Allah. In our lifetime, we met one such man who was very close to Allah. And because of his closeness, people gathered around him. People gathered close to him. And people came to him because they could feel his closeness to Allah. And that closeness that he felt, they were able to transfer into themselves. So while they were in his presence, men felt closer to Allah. This is one of the qualities of a great sheikh. When you are with a great sheikh, he is able to soothe the problems of your daily life and make them disappear, make them go away into the larger picture of reality. Allah's reality is beyond this reality. Allah's reality is a reality in a light world as opposed to a world of physical things. In this light world that is Allah's world, the kinds of things that people get upset about, the kinds of things that people make a fuss about, the kinds of things that people fight about, the kinds of things that people kill each other about, the kinds of things that people are jealous of, they don't exist. They don't exist in that world. That world is different than this world. And that's why that world is called paradise, because in paradise, the conflicts of this world don't exist. Now, if you want to enter into paradise, and of course, everybody is talking about paradise and everybody talks about entering into paradise, but there are certain prerequisites for entering into paradise. And they include giving up your attachment to all of these petty differences and fights that you have within this world. So your jealousies over manifest things, your jealousies over possessions has to disappear. Your anger over not being able to get your own way has to disappear. Your egoism, wherein you are centered entirely on yourself, has to disappear. Fanaticism about your religion has to disappear. You have to be able to be not only within your own religion and understand your own religion, you have to be able to understand that all religions are seeking the same God, that all religions are looking for truth, and you can't try and force other people to just see your way. And this is a major accomplishment in becoming a true human being. The ability to be able to do what it is you do in the way that you do it without also simultaneously trying to force other people to do it in your way. This fanaticism of religion is one of the great dangers in this world and is one of the reasons that men are often within conflict. This fanaticism that I am right under all and any circumstances and everybody else is wrong is a very difficult place for a man to be in. And it creates a veil between himself and reality, because what has become his reality is his imagination about how right he is about things as opposed to truth. His insistence on him knowing what's right is more important than truth. His ego will not allow him to give up that arrogance that holds him in place and keeps him from learning. One of the initial things that one has to do when one meets a true teacher is they have to give up their ideas. They have to give up all that they have thought is appropriate, and they have to begin to listen and understand what the teacher is trying to tell them. And what the teacher does is he changes their resonance. He changes the way they think. He changes their ideas. He brings truth to them for the first time in their life. Most of us go through an entire lifetime never meeting anyone who knows the truth about things. And so we accept what we're told, and because we don't have any other reference point, we begin to believe that what we're told is the only truth, and anything that comes from anywhere else is not true. And you'll see this in each of the religions. They will tell you, we are the way, and there is no other way. And unless you go our way, you cannot be saved. It's as if the religion makes the decision as to whom Allah will give mercy and to whom Allah will discard. Well, You can't make these decisions on behalf of Allah. You can't make these decisions on behalf of the Lord. He makes these decisions on his own. And we should stay out of these decisions, and we should stay out of creating differences. Creating differences is one of the things that religion does. If you go to Mecca, for instance, you have to be able to show papers that you are a Muslim, or they won't let you in. If you go to certain masses in certain churches, you have to be a member of that religion to be allowed to go into the church. There was just a church built in Philadelphia of people of the Mormon faith. And they gave tours of the church for the first 2 or 3 weeks that it was open, and everyone was welcome. But after that, unless you were a member of the Mormon church, you were not allowed to go into the building. It's like that. Religions separate themselves off from the rest of the world and separate their ideas off from the rest of the world and hold themselves to be holy, hold themselves to be important, hold themselves to know the only true way. Well, Allah has sent 124,000 prophets into the world. That means 124,000 lights came from Allah's kingdom into this earth to explain the world of light, to explain the truth of existence, to explain the span of existence, to differentiate between life and death, and to understand and to explain that it is one continuum that has no stop in between it, that it goes on, and the only difference between life and death is our holding on to this life in this world because of our desire and our inability to be able to see beyond our senses. We, all of us, have these senses that interact with the material world. These senses of sight and smell and hearing and tasting and touching. All of these interact with the material world. However, we are told that there is a world of light beyond this material world. Can we understand this world of light? Can we understand the difference between the material world and the light world? Now, I know all of you, all of us, have heard people talk about auras. The aura being the light form that comes off everybody, which sort of indicates their nature. Now, some people can actually see these auras. Most of us can't see these auras, but there's been enough talk about them that almost all of us are convinced that there are auras. Now, take it a step further. When this body disappears, what remains? When this body disappears, is there something that goes on, or is that the end of existence? Well, the way it was explained to us is that there is a continuum, and that continuum has no separation. And at the point of that continuum, one of two things, or one of a few things, occurs. One is that you are very strongly attached at death to this world, or two, in the alternative, you have given up your attachments to this world. If you are very strongly attached to this world, and if things like wealth and fame and power and possessions control your being and are very important to you, then you create an energy flow within yourself that is attached to this material world. And that energy flow within you that is attached to this material world is so powerful that when the time of death comes, your desire for this world is so strong that you can't escape from the pull of the material world. And this is what's called reincarnation. This is when you come back again and again because you haven't let go of this world. The other alternative is that you've detached from this material world. You've detached from your desire for this material world. You've given up that desire. Once that break happens between that desire for the material world and yourself, then you are free to leave this elemental phase of existence and go into the light phase of existence. And then you become a light. And what is the light that you become? The light is the truth. The light is Allah. The light is Allah's qualities. The light is Allah's names. The light are the gracious qualities of our Creator. The light is a world that coexists simultaneously as this world exists, but is in an entirely different plane and in an entirely different mode of being. Within that light world, there is no jealousy. There is no egoism. There is no religious differences. There is no differences. There is no race. There is no caste. There is no religion. There is truth. You see, when the prophets came, and 124,000 of them came, so many people fell in love with the prophets that they began to create an institution around the prophet as opposed to creating an institution involving Allah. And the institutions became more important than the relationship to our Lord. We need to refocus our identity. We need to refocus who we are. Who are we? We are a slave of our Lord. That is how we should begin to define ourselves. Anything more that we use to define ourselves will bring us into the world of differences and create veils between ourselves and reality. As soon as we begin to create veils between ourselves and our fellow man, we begin to create veils between ourselves and reality. We have to be able to abandon all of the differences that we have in this world. We have to be able to abandon everything that we have, which is a judgment about others. We have to abandon all of our egocentric ideas about ourselves being the middle of the universe. We have to abandon the idea that we know everything. We have to abandon our arrogance. We have to abandon our fanaticism. We have to become small. We have to become humble. We have to become the ones who have taken and given up their own will for the will of God. But we can't do that if we're arrogant. We can't do that if we know everything. The only way we can do that is to ask our Lord to show us the true way and to take us on the true path. And then when he does in fact come and show us, we have to be able to accept it. We have to be able to follow it as opposed to fighting it. We have to give up our imagination. Our imagination is a veil between ourselves and truth. Every idea that we have as to how things should be has to be erased from us. Every idea that we have as to the nature of our Lord has to be erased from us. Every idea that we have as to the nature of ourselves has to be erased from us. We have to do away with all that is inappropriate in our being. This is called fana, that state where we become erased. But what becomes erased? All of the bad qualities become erased. All of the qualities that are not Allah become erased. All of the qualities that aren't truth become erased. And as those qualities become erased from us, then we begin to see our true self, and then we begin to climb the ladder of beginning to know who in fact we are. In order to know the truth about our Lord, we have to know the truth about ourselves. And as long as we have made up an idea of who we are that isn't true, these ideas that we've made up become veils that separate us from knowing ourselves and knowing the truth. If we think that we are more important than others, we've created a veil between ourselves and the truth. If we think we know better than everybody else, we've created a veil between ourselves and everybody else. As long as we believe in the sanctity of ourselves and cannot simultaneously believe in the sanctity of others, we've created a veil between ourselves and the truth. When it is said, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, it means that and so much more. It means there is a unity among all men in existence, and there is a sameness among all men in existence. They all came from the same place. They all came from the same creator. They all came from the same mother and father, and they all have the same right to our Lord. And our Lord waits for them. Our Lord is ready to forgive them up to their last breath. Our Lord awaits their coming out of themselves into the truth. Our Lord awaits us, each of us, giving up ourselves and coming in the truth. This has to be our intention. If our intention is wealth in this world, then we'll be paid with that. If our intention is fame in this world, then we will get the results of fame in this world. If our intention is power in this world, we will get the results of power in this world. If you want power in this world, power will destroy you. If you want fame in this world, fame will destroy you. If you want wealth in this world, wealth will destroy you. The things that you love in this world will be the things that will kill you. All desire brings about destruction. Rumi talks about sugar and how sugar tastes so good. But if you eat too much sugar, you end up with diabetes, and eventually it will kill you. We need to know that within everything there seems to be joy in that is associated with this manifest world, with this physical world, there are also within that which will destroy you. We have to shift our desires. We have to shift towards a desire that actually has a cure. And the only cure comes with the desire to know our Creator, the desire to know ourselves, the desire to know truth. So we need to shift. We need to shift the way we view things. We have to stop looking outside and we have to start looking inside, because inside of us is where Allah placed the light. Inside of us is where Allah placed the nur. Inside of us is where Allah placed his resonance. And if we can't see that resonance and that light within us, we're certainly never going to see it outside of ourselves. We have to find it within us. We have to be able to focus within us. And we have to pray that Allah brings the truth into our being, that Allah gives us a focus on reality where we can identify the difference between what is false and what is true, what is of the world and what is of Allah. And we have to focus on what is of Allah, because it has to be our intention to become that which is of Allah. And we do that through our actions, through our thoughts, and through everything we do in this world. We have to change from doing for ourselves to doing for Allah. And what does it mean to do for Allah? It means to incorporate his qualities into our actions and to act with those qualities. So when mercy comes from us, it is coming from Allah, and we are doing his will. When compassion comes through us, we are doing Allah's will. When we aid the world, we are doing Allah's will. When we aid the beings in this world, we are doing Allah's work. We have to become Allah's helpmates in this world to do his work. He is the protector, the sustainer, and the nourisher. We have to be able to protect the rest of humanity. We have to try to help our own little circle. That's why things like charity have been instituted as a pillar of Islam. There is an explicit understanding that man needs to help other man. Man needs to do on behalf of other man. Man can't just be isolated and involved in himself. He has to be involved in his community, and he has to become an aid to his community. He has to do work on behalf of his community, just as Allah does work on behalf of all of humanity. Inshallah, it'll come to pass that we become the helpers of Allah, that we give up our will for his will, and then his will becomes the dominant will in this world, and then peace and tranquility and contentment will reside in every corner of his creation. Ameen, ameen. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.